Lewis took out a bottle of life potion from his family's supplies and handed it to the healer. "Give this to her." The healer paused slightly, but then slowly poured the potion into her mouth. After a while, her pale face seemed to regain a little color, and her breathing became steadier. Although she was still unconscious, it seemed her life had been saved. A bottle of life potion is quite expensive. Hopefully, she will wake up, Lewis said as he looked at the girl. If only someone in our territory knew how to use magic soil, Lewis said casually from behind his desk, tapping his fingers on the surface. But his eyes kept glancing at Hilko, sitting at the small desk nearby. Hilko was focused on writing quickly, recording the catch and smoked fish production. His dark circles were even worse than last night. When he heard Lewis's complaint, he suddenly stopped writing, pressed his fingers to his temples, and tried to wake himself up. No, this couldn't be a hallucination. Because this was the 5th time today he heard Lewis say that. Even if he was sleep-deprived, he shouldn't be hearing hallucinations 5 times, right? Hilko's hand paused slightly, finally confirming one thing. This clearly is a deliberate hint about himself. Making magical soil is a basic skill every alchemist learns. And he, being a genius in alchemy, naturally understands this. But the problem is, he has never revealed this part of his identity to anyone, at least not in the Red Tide territory. So, how does Lewis know? His mind races quickly, trying to remember if he accidentally let something slip before. Or maybe, he simply can't hide his natural talent for alchemy? While he was thinking, Lewis spoke again, still sounding helpless. "It would be great if I could make the magical soil myself." This was the 6th time he said that. Lewis kept repeating like a monk chanting, and Hilko finally couldn't take it anymore. He took a deep breath and pretended to be calm as he said, "I know a little. I learned some at the church school before." As soon as he finished, Hilko wanted to slap himself. What a lie! How could the church school teach how to make magical soil? But Lewis seemed to believe this explanation completely, even showing a look of sudden realization. He asked with interest, "Oh, is that so? Can you help me then?" Inside the office, the atmosphere fell into a tense silence. Does he really believe it? Hilko subtly glanced at Lewis. From his expression, it didn't look like he was fooled. Instead, it seemed like he was finally admitting the truth, eagerly waiting for Hilko to prepare the magical soil. Hilko. Of course, Lewis knew about Hilko's identity as an apprentice alchemist. Plants like frost blood crimson berries must grow in highly acidic soil. Only then can they absorb nutrients efficiently, making the fruit full, bright red, and better at boosting combat energy. If the soil is neutral or alkaline, nutrients get locked in, causing poor plant growth, yellowing leaves, or even no fruit at all. But the problem is how to prepare acidic soil. Lewis only has a rough idea and doesn't know the exact ratios or methods. However, he knew who could do it. Hilko, the guy hiding his apprentice alchemist identity. Lewis wanted to wait for Hilko to speak first, but the situation was urgent, and the frost blood crimson berries couldn't be delayed. Unfortunately, today he had to reveal himself. Silence spread between the two, and the fire in the fireplace crackled. Hilko looked down at his ledger on the table, thinking about the pros and cons. Finally, he sighed slowly, as if he had accepted his fate. "All right, but I have one condition. Let me take a day off each week." This time, Lewis was silent. For the currently short-staffed Red Tide clan, it did feel like a waste of talent. He hadn't taken a day off in a month. But on the other hand, if Hilko continued working at this pace, he might collapse someday. Lewis sighed. "Fine, deal." Then Hilko handed Lewis a list of materials needed for magic soil. Most of the materials could be bought at the Frost Spear City Market. But one name caught Lewis's eye for a moment. "You really are brave to bring that up." Lewis chuckled and looked up at Hilko. "I just listed the standard recipe." Hilko shrugged. "Of course, you can use substitutes, but the effect might. No magic marrow. Then the magic soil's effect will be greatly reduced," Lewis said directly. Hilko spread his hands and said nothing. Lewis rubbed his forehead. Magic marrow was indeed a bit expensive. The Red Tide clan did have some, located in the northwest mining area. But mining there was a little tricky. Technically, it was not too difficult. Using rough methods, even just hitting the veins with iron picks, they could extract some for making magic soil. But the real problem wasn't here. According to intelligence reports, a few frost giants had been wandering near the mines since early spring. Frost giants were among the most troublesome monsters in the northern lands. They usually lived in extremely cold places, were huge and incredibly strong, with skin as hard as ice, making it difficult for ordinary weapons to harm them effectively. What's more, they could control cold air, creating freezing storms over the battlefield, slowing down enemies or freezing them to death. Lewis hadn't rushed to deal with this issue before, partly because the Red Tide clan was still developing, focusing on farming and production, and had no time to worry about the mines. On the other hand, the mining area was far from the residents, so the giants did not pose a real threat to the territory. At that time, there was little knowledge about the frost giants, and rushing to attack was very risky. Therefore, he only sent a few knights to secretly observe and gather more information. But now the situation has changed. In recent months, the intelligence system has provided some information about the weaknesses of the frost giants. The territory's development has also stabilized, and it is time to take action to eliminate this hidden danger. Since mining the magic marrow is necessary, it is also a good opportunity to clear out the mining area and fully control these resources for the Crimson Tide territory. Lewis thought for a moment and immediately began to act. He first summoned 2 knights and handed them Hilco's list. Go to Frost Spear City to buy alchemy materials according to this list. The sooner, the better. Yes. The knights took the list and hurried away. Then he called the knight Captain Lambert and said, "Lambert, gather all the knights and prepare for battle." Lambert was slightly surprised but asked no questions. He responded in a serious tone, "Understood, my lord. The target is the Northwest Mountains to defeat the frost giants," Lewis said firmly. "Make sure everyone is assembled properly." "Yes," Lambert replied decisively, then stood up and left quickly. Soon, the Knights of the Crimson Tide had gathered swiftly. Their horses neighed loudly as they headed toward the mining area in the northwest of the territory. Lewis stood on a hidden rocky outcrop, overlooking an open area in the valley below. For frost giants were throwing huge stones, then using massive ice stone clubs to send the stones flying, having fun. "Are they playing baseball?" Lewis muttered, but he remained alert. These enormous creatures were about 5 meters tall, covered in natural armor made of ice crystals and rock fragments. Just looking at their muscular, rugged bodies was enough to remind one of terrifying brute strength. Their ice stone clubs, about 6 meters long, could leave deep cracks in the ground when swung. Even more frightening was the pale blue cold mist surrounding the frost giants, which was their extreme cold domain. If an ordinary person got too close, their blood circulation would slow down, or they might even freeze into ice sculptures. Fortunately, there are only 4 of them. If there had been 40, Lewis would have had to carry the Red Tide leader and run away overnight. Are we nervous? Not really. He already knew the weaknesses of the frost giants and had set traps in advance. Plus, this time he brought most of the knights from the Red Tide leader and over 100 soldiers. 53 knights against 4 frost giants. It's an advantage for us. Is everyone ready? Lewis asked quietly. Yes, sir. Everyone is in position, the commander replied. Good, Lewis nodded slightly. Follow the plan. Let these big guys taste our tactics. He slowly raised his right hand, fingers together. Move out. The commander waved the large flag, and the knights hiding in different places moved at the same time. A sharp arrow shot across the sky, trailing flames in a red trail, hitting the frost giants. Startled by the sudden attack, the 4 giants paused, then roared loudly. They stomped the ground with their huge feet and angrily headed toward the flames. Separate them, Lambert shouted. The knights split into 4 groups, attacking the giants from different directions, using long spears to provoke them. Each attack hit the giants' most sensitive spots: knees, faces, between fingers, and underarms. The giants roared, swinging ice rock clubs to crush these tiny enemies. But the knights were prepared. They quickly retreated, using the terrain and speed to delay the giants and guide them into the trap areas. After a few minutes, the 4 giants were completely separated and entered different trap zones. The waiting trap team suddenly threw out heavy rope nets. The heavy ropes wrapped tightly around the giants' legs. The giants' steps slowed. They struggled to tear free from the bindings. Hidden knights on the sides quickly rushed forward, stabbing their sharp spears or swords into the weak joints behind the giants' knees. The spears pierced their cold flesh. Here, The ice armor was the thinnest. Each strike made the giants roar loudly in pain, staggering back in agony. Retreat, change positions. The warriors quickly dispersed in different directions, avoiding giving the giants a chance to fight back. The giant let out a painful roar and knelt down, its struggling movements slowing suddenly. Meanwhile, hidden soldiers threw torches fiercely, flames licking the giant's tough ice armor. Soon, the cold aura began to weaken, and the surface of the ice armor started cracking from the heat. Archers took the chance to shoot flaming arrows, which cut through the night sky and aimed at the giant's face. Several arrows hit its eyes and cheeks accurately, and the flames scorched its flesh. Roar, the giant painfully covered its face and struggled violently. Knights, get ready. Target the heart and throat. The knights activated their fighting spirit, which burned bright red on their swords and spears. They spurred their horses forward, like sharp red blades, aiming to strike the giant's heart and throat. Blood splattered as the first giant let out a final scream and collapsed with a loud crash. Of course, not all groups had such luck. Suddenly, a deafening roar came from a trap area. Roar, it was an especially furious frost giant, breaking free from the rope net. Its thick legs stomped with force, causing the trap-filled ground to crack and stones to fly. Oh no, this trap can't hold it at all. The leading knight's face changed. Just as he was about to order his team to surround it again, the giant was already furious. It suddenly spread its arms wide and roared at the sky, its icy aura rising sharply. A violent frost storm swept out in all directions. The storm carried countless sharp ice blades, covering the entire area instantly. The cold wind tore through the land, knocking the knights over unexpectedly. 2 novice knights were caught in the storm, their armor quickly covered with thick ice, freezing them stiff. Then, the storm suddenly pulled them away, throwing them forcefully against the rocks, rendering them unable to fight. Another knight, caught off guard, was struck by the giant's massive club. He was flung dozens of meters away like a broken kite, crashing heavily to the ground and spitting blood. The scene fell into chaos. But just as the frost giant prepared to swing its club again, a streak of red fighting spirit suddenly cut through the snowstorm, directly striking the giant's wrist. The blazing sword energy tore a long wound across the giant's cold iron muscles, causing deep blue blood to spray out and freeze into ice crystals on the snow. Cut its leg, Lambert shouted angrily, raising his great sword high, infused with strong fighting spirit, aiming straight at the giant's knee. 2 elite knights followed closely, forming a triangle attack formation, rushing toward the giant. Charge! Lambert's great sword struck down hard, targeting the joint behind the giant's knee. This strike embedded deeply into the icy armor, slicing through tendons. The giant's massive body trembled violently, almost kneeling. Another elite knight leapt up, his sword burning with fiery fighting spirit, stabbing fiercely into the giant's ribs. The last knight swung forcefully at the giant's ankle, trying to completely throw off its balance. The 3 strikes hit simultaneously. The giant, overwhelmed by pain, roared loudly, tearing the sky with its cry, and tried to swing its club again to fight back. "Stop it!" Lambert shouted angrily, stomping hard on the ground to leap again. He swung his great sword in a reverse slash, accurately cutting at the giant's wrist joint. A clear cracking sound was heard. The giant's grip on the club suddenly loosened. The huge ice rock club slipped from its fingers and crashed heavily onto the ground, sending a shower of ice shards into the air. Now, the knights behind raised their spears high. With a deafening roar, all their weapons pierced into the giant's vital points at the same time. Puff, 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 puff. Ice-cold blood splattered, staining the snow. The enraged giant could no longer hold on. Its enormous body collapsed with a thunderous crash, completely lifeless. The corpse of the frost giant lay sprawled on the ground, its massive body lifeless, with a strong smell of blood in the air. Soldiers hurriedly tidied up the battlefield, while the knights tended to their comrades' injuries. Fortunately, they were well prepared, and casualties were not serious. Most people only suffered minor frostbite or cuts, which could be treated with the ointments and bandages they carried. A few doctors worked nearby, bandaging wounds and applying warm medicine to prevent the cold from spreading. However, one night, who had been knocked flying by the furious frost giant, was in very serious condition. His face was pale, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, his armor was shattered by the giant, and his chest was deeply sunken. It is clear that his ribs are broken, and his internal organs are likely badly injured. Although he is still breathing,